Good morning, everybody. The name's Completator, and today I'm going to be showing you a new contraption that I made that I like to call the Observer Observing Observer. So what does the Observer Observing Observer do? Watch. So let's take a block that isn't an observer, and we'll put it on the altar right here. Okay, let's do that. Nothing happened. Very unfortunate. So as you can see, that was a dud. That was a big dud. If we try a block that isn't an observer, it doesn't work. Let's just throw these blocks out behind here. But if we do take a block that is in fact an observer, then let me get that out. So let's try it. And as we can see, some freaky stuff starts happening. A progress bar starts happening on top of the guy's head, and the observer starts looking at the observer. Now the Observer Observing Observer has observed the observer. Thank you very much. That was a tongue twister and it took me a long time to say. So let's just look around at this thing. It just looks like a normal, a normal observer built with roughly intermediate skills. I haven't done pixel art since Minecraft 1.3 or something like that, so you'll have to forgive me for my amateurness there. Okay, so now that I've added the manual trigger button outside, let me just show you what it looks like again. So now the eyes retract, everything starts spinning around inside, the progress bar loads, and then once it gets to the original eyes, let's see, there you go. It goes back to its original state. And now let's go inside. So this is something that I like to call spaghetti redstone. Now what's spaghetti redstone? Spaghetti redstone is when you take a whole bunch of different colors of wool, or different colors of concrete if you're new to the game, and you just sort of throw them around everywhere, and it's kind of hard to track each and every one of them, so it kind of ends up looking like different lines of spaghetti. But I'll just break it down for you real quick. So now that I have the outside manual button here, I will show you what each of them do, what each of these colored circuits do one by one. So first off, the red circuit. If I can hit the button. I can't hit the button, can I? That's embarrassing. Okay. So see? That's all the red circuit does. All the red circuit does is it takes these 2x2, these 8 sticky pistons right here, pulses them so that they go in, so that they extend, they grab this block, they grab these 4 blocks, pull them in, and then everything else can start. And then once the next set of eyes is in that position, what will happen is the whole red circuit will trigger again, and these will spit out the blocks again to the new state of observer. But for all that to happen, you'll notice that there's some glass around it, and that's where the orange circuit comes in. So if you've watched my channel for a while, or for at least, call it 2 or 3 videos now, you'll know that I'm a big fan of piston feed tapes. And this is one of them. So what this does is basically just cycles these glass and different sets of eye blocks around until the non-glass blocks get into the position that they need to be in, and then the red circuit triggers. It's really as simple as that. And now if we go in rainbow order, we'll see the yellow circuit that makes this all possible, or that makes the extension possible at the exact moment when the eye is in the correct position. So what it does is this. I will hit the button again and show you what's up. Go back to spectator mode. Okay. So you'll see here that as the blocks circle around, it will either... There you go. See that? You see how when the solid block happens, when the solid block gets into... You'll see that when the solid block gets into this position right here, on top of this redstone, aka right here, what happens is this line gets cut. And when this line gets cut, this observer gets triggered, which then triggers this line over here, which then triggers the orange, which then triggers the red. It's all very sequential, and I made it that way on purpose, just because I like the sort of linearity of it. Oh god, you're kidding me, right? Okay, I broke the redstone. So following the rainbow logic again, we're going to go not to dark green but to lime, but to this lime circuit here. And what this lime circuit does is basically controls when this red circuit fires versus when this here blue circuit fires. So what happens is when you press this button over here, what'll happen is it'll push this, it'll trigger this redstone line, which will then activate this sticky piston, push these slime blocks, push this observer to pulse this redstone repeater, go into this pulse extender, push this redstone block, and then the red circuit activates. So that means that that once you push this button, the very first thing that happens is that this here circuit will pulse. And what that does is it retracts the eye. So push the button, first thing you do is retract the eye. Cool stuff. Then what happens with the other observer here is something called a falling edge. Now what the falling edge is, well, once you push this piston out, well, if you know anything about how slime blocks work, the observer goes with it. So the observer will go here when the piston here is extended. And when it's not extended, or when the piston retracts, then the observer goes back into this location, pulses this block over here, pulses this pulse extender, turns off this torch, turns off this piston, another observer is triggered, which then sends a redstone pulse into this very dinky little T flip-flop, or actually no, it's not a T flip-flop, sorry, it's an RS NOR latch. Can you tell that I'm still quite rusty with my redstone? But yeah, it triggers this RS NOR latch to move this axe from here to here. And what that does is it allows this comparator to take a signal out of here, push a signal into this repeater and into this entire redstone line. And what that does is it will trigger this orange circuit, which again cycles the piston feed tape to the next eye position. So again, without being so pitifully bad at explaining things, push button, eye retracts, this happens, piston feed tape gets switched to the next eye. Piston feed tape stops when we're at the other eye that we want to be at. And then this observer here triggers twice. And what that does is it pushes this guy out at the beginning, and then on the falling edge, aka when the new eye is in position, is this observer will go back and it will trigger the redstone component, not the redstone, it'll trigger the red circuit again, which pushes out the new eye. So what have we done so far? We have triggered this blue line. So then what happens is this turns on, the blue line turns on, the eye gets pulled back, the orange circuit cycles to the next eye that we want. So either the googly eye or the normal eye. If it's on the googly eye, then it will cycle until you're at the normal eye, and if you're at the normal eye, then it will cycle until you're at the googly eye. At which point, these two rows of pistons, these two rows of pistons will push the eye out again to the new eye. Whew, I really, really hope that made sense. And now for the back section. Now that we've covered the eyes and what happens with the eyes, I want to explain what happens at the top with that loading screen. Not the loading screen, with the loading bar. I'll just show you what that is again in case you guys missed it the first time. So, let's check that out. And it'll anytime now. There we go. Awesome. Yeah, this thing right here. I'm going to show you guys how that works. And if you want to understand the loading bar, you have to look over here at this cyan circuit over here. So, once the orange circuit goes, once the piston feed tape gets triggered, what will happen is this redstone will pulse on and on and off. This redstone will pulse on and off and on and off. That is not a very steady. Signal. I did not want that, so I fed it into a pulse extender, which is more resistant to that kind of thing. I'll just break that and I'll show you sort of what I mean. So let's say that this lever is the same thing as when this redstone cycles around and around and around. It's like this. It's like that. It's not very usable. And as a result, what I needed to do is I needed to elongate that signal by feeding it into a pulse extender. So what'll happen is when an erratic signal goes into a pulse extender, it becomes a longer, steadier, more reliable pulse. And what that lets me do, I've definitely broken this, fixed it. Okay, so now that we've fixed the issue of not having a reliable output from this piston feed tape using this pulse extender, I took the current up through this glass over here to turn off this torch, to turn off this repeater, which then in turn turns off the redstone on this hopper clock. Now what this hopper clock does is it will have an item where it'll have the item right here. And when the torch turns off, then this redstone turns off, which allows this item to cycle through these different hoppers. And so why do I want to do that? Because there are comparators on this end. The comparators will read whether or not there is an item in here, and if there is, then the comparator will power on, this torch will power off, these pistons will power off, and you get the loading bar effect. Oh, come on! Fixed it. Now I'm just going to reset this and show you guys how this works too, because this was just a really improv, very freestyle little bit of redstone. So real quick before I explain how the altar works, I just want you guys to pick up on something. When I placed the observer, it looked like this, but when the observer popped up, it looked like this. Now, it's not witchcraft. There's been no rotation mechanism added to Minecraft, as far as I can tell, even though I'm waiting. I am waiting for that mechanism, but no. No, we didn't have that. These are actually different observers. Let me show you how I do it. So this is what the altar looks like with... Ooh, there we go. So this is what the altar looks like without the trapdoors on top. And let me explain how it detects whether or not the block placed here is an observer or not. So first off, when you place a block here, this observer will observe that block. Now this observer will then, it'll output a pulse to this piston, pushing out this observer, triggering this redstone, causing this block to push out, and the block that you placed here to get pushed like that. So now your block is in this state. If it's not an observer, then you'll notice that it will not push, it'll not output a signal over here. It won't output a signal into this block, into this redstone, and down this redstone line into the machine. So it won't work. But if you do, I'm just going to break this so it doesn't break the whole machine. If you do place an observer in, then it will output a pulse. Okay, I fixed it. I fixed it. I will now break this redstone to show you how it really works. Okay, let's reset that and pretend that nothing happened. Nothing happened. Nothing. Look at me. Look at me. Nothing happened. Anyway, so let's say that you do place an observer here. You'll notice that when observers get pushed, they will pulse. So that's because, well, actually I have no idea why. I think it's because the block behind them technically changed from this block over here to this block over here. Maybe that's how that works. I don't know. Probably somebody who's better at redstone than I am will comment and really just go to town with that explanation. Please, just go for it. Anyway, when you push this piston, you see that the observer pulses, and this altar works on the same mechanic. So if you do place an observer here, then this block will push the observer into this spot, which will then cause the observer to pulse into this block, into this redstone, into this repeater, down to this redstone, which will then trigger a double piston extender on this observer. This double piston extender over here is entirely aesthetic. It makes it look more like an altar, I'd say. Hold on. Oh yeah, I placed it the wrong way. So when you place the observer here, then it will pulse into this redstone. It'll pulse into this block, into this redstone. That this observer over here gets pushed up for the like ceremonial effect, and then this whole machine gets triggered. Now, for those of you who are a bit more redstone minded, you'll notice that in the altar you get a configuration like this, and that will cause an infinite clock that will just keep pulsing until the end of time. And the way that I get around that is by having this piston right here. So what this piston does is that after pushing this, after extending this double piston extender and pushing this observer up, these two repeaters will power, and then this piston will trigger, which breaks this redstone here and stops this observer from just absolutely freaking out. So yeah, that was really about it. I hope you guys enjoyed this little contraption I made. It's not the smartest thing, but you know, I thought it was pretty entertaining to make, pretty entertaining to watch, and I hope you guys felt the same way. And you know, if you did feel the same way, thank you for watching. Please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and overall feed the algorithm. But yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. I will see you next time.